and they were doing a lot of artwork. And I remembered a picture that they had drawn that was called The Reign of Terror. And so that sort of encouraged me on, because it gave me confirmation that we were on the right track at that point. So that was the Reign of Terror programming is actually what formed this wall of terror that the Lord was taking me around. And that was just to seal in the actual memory of what had happened when I went to Tibet. So it turned out that Mengele, I was programmed by Mengele, and that I think I was probably 8 or 9, maybe 10 when I was taken there the first time. And it was a programming center in Colorado, near Colorado Springs. And I have a lot of memories from that area, but this particular memory, I remembered Mengele. He had a laboratory, which I spent a lot of time in. But this memory, he took me down the hallway to another room. And in this room, there was a chair. And it makes me wonder if it wasn't a chair like the Montauk chair, because it was a chair that I had to sit in to do this work. And so he started out by giving me a shot, number one, which was pretty standard. But he started showing me pictures of Tibet, and he was very excited, and just talked about that I was going to get to go to Tibet. And I was about 14 when this actual memory happened, but I had been going there for quite some time by this time. So this chair, I don't really remember anything about this chair other than it was big and I had to sit in it. And then when I had the shot, then of course I didn't, at a conscious level, I wasn't remembering anything else that happened. So I traveled in the astral from this chair, and I had a sensation of just moving really fast, like down a tunnel, or it was just darkness, and I was just moving at a very rapid pace. And when I showed up in this temple in Tibet, there was one man that was there to meet me, and there was a whole group of little boys, and I think they were probably, I would say, 7, 8 years old. They were pretty young, and they were there for a ritual that was going to be done with me. And they were essentially going to be powering up on the energies that I had acquired through this programming with Mengele. And so I was born in February of 1949. And if you take that back 9 months, I was actually conceived probably in the same week, if not the same day, that Israel became a nation. So
y'all take special note of that, okay? It's very important. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I've come across a few other people that were born or conceived at that same time. So the Lord has really given me some downloads on that thing. And basically what they did was, the occult, the Illuminati, have their ideas of how the end times are going to play out. They have their own plans, and they believe that they're instrumental in everything that's going to happen, which, they could be. But so they're always planning on an antichrist. For every generation, they have antichrist standing in the wings. They also have brides of Christ standing in the wings. And I think this was the program that I was designed for. And I think it was because of my lineage, because of the bloodlines that I had come from. So the downloads the Lord has given to me on it is that Hitler was so deep into the occult that he achieved a very extremely high status as an occult person. And his status was such that he could actually channel Satan. So when he would breed with women and Satan was on board, it was essentially Satan breeding the women. So they considered the children that were born from those unions as Satan's children. And so that, I believe, is how I came to be. In some of the work I did on my own at home, some of the Mengele information came forth of how he showed me later on when I was older a sacrifice of a woman that had been bred in this way. And what had happened was she had conceived, and I don't think the embryo was very old at all, just a few days. And they actually sacrificed this woman and took the egg and implanted it into a second woman who carried the egg to full term. In my case, I believe that once I was born, that woman, the second woman, was also sacrificed. And then I was put in the arms of my quote unquote mother, which, I don't know if she's my mother or not. I question that now that all this information has come forth. And so it seems to be a pretty, like a protocol that they use to create these women for each generation, just like the Antichrist, that will stand in as the bride of Christ.
And you said quite a mouthful there, and I mean, this may seem like a silly question, but do you believe that Hitler was physically used at 1948, or do you believe the mainstream storyline that he died and somehow maybe they froze some of his DNA? This is a personal question.
Yeah. Daniel, I really don't know about that. I know I've had some information come forth that he didn't really die. I've had other information come forth that he did die and they used his brain to clone or to try to make clones of him, which are still operating. There's also some questions for me personally about when the actual conception took place. In other words, I was conceived in 1948 according to my birth certificate, but I don't know for sure that wasn't an egg that was frozen or an egg that was kept, or so I don't know that part. But I know that what I was shown was the protocol that is used and has been used to create these chosen ones, if you will. So
you are now astral projecting to Tibet from the United States, which, by the way, for the average person is really difficult to astral project that far. Not that I endorse astral projection, because, folks, I don't. But this is what is done in the occult, and so we talk about it. Now, Jan has extraordinary abilities. In our last episode, you talked about astral projecting and remote viewing on Mars and the moon and other places. So this is the kind of level of power that Jan had abilities in. And you're there for a ceremony. So you are actually in the astral realm as a person about to do a ritual with Tibetan monks and these children who are there physically. And they're aware of you there in the astral. That's incredible. Please continue the story.
Thank you. It's really interesting because now that I understand and I know how that works, I still don't have a conscious awareness of that way of doing things. I see in the spirit, and I see my memories in the spirit, and I go in the spirit and see things, but I don't think I've ever actually experienced traveling in the astral at a conscious level. So for me, it's still one of those it's not that I really want to experience that in the conscious level, but it's still out there for me. So you had asked Jesus if I needed to be untethered from Tibet and so forth, and so you started praying, and you prayed for this the temple. You prayed for Mengele's lab. And the interesting thing was when you started praying, I saw that lab just exploding. I mean, it just broke into a million pieces. And after that, the Lord kind of gave me a download that lab was actually in the astral, which was interesting because I had done some research on that facility, looking for evidence of that facility on Google Maps. And I had found an imprint in the area where I thought that building stood. But I knew that the building was no longer there. So when I saw it explode, I thought, well, this is really interesting. And then come to find out, this building had actually been kept in the astral, used in the astral, and Mengele had actually worked there in the astral, which for me just adds another whole. I mean, Mengele has a very extensive history in the physical and the astral in America. And I don't know whether we'll ever unravel all of that or not, but it's amazing.
Well, and I think that people that are awakening to the knowledge that they have been used in laboratories, manipulated in laboratories, and experimented on in laboratories are running into the brutal reality of trying to reconcile a story that requires an understanding of the lower realms of the spirit or the astral world, because what they are looking for is not going to be found in the physical realm, even though their experiences are very real. I think that this fundamental lack of understanding, this single key, I think has kept a lot of people bound up and locked up because they can't believe their memories were they to surface because the physical evidence is lacking, because there is no physical evidence. And we have to begin to come to a just agreement that, look, we're going to look at the whole of creation for what it is, because it is real. God made it, and you know what? Evil has manipulated it, and people have experiences that are legitimately happening in non-physical locations. And I'm so glad that you're able to articulate that.
Absolutely. And another part of that is, for me, it's been hard to accept the memories and the information that's come forth because it doesn't match the history that I've been taught. And so I think this is a huge schism for survivors, because we have not been taught history as it has really played out. There have been many things that have been hidden from us, these programs, agendas, and so forth. And when you have a memory of something that happened that is not in a history book anywhere, that no one has ever talked about, it's so hard to believe that because it doesn't match up with the party line, so to speak. And so I feel like after all these years, I'm finally getting to a place where I can start working around that, so that so I'm not so dependent on trying to prove everything historically, because you just can't do it. It's just not there. So, and Mengele is one of the biggest subjects of this, because his history is very different from what the books would tell us, I believe. So you prayed, and the children. I had seen children in cages still in that astral laboratory of Mengele's. So it was still operating by a soul part of Mengele. So another thing that you prayed about when you prayed about the Tibetan temple was Rothschild's Israel, and I didn't really understand the full implication of that. I know that Rothschild is part of my history and the bloodlines and so forth, but I understand it in the sense that they have their own agenda for the end times and think that they're right. So it's always good when we have prayers for them. So after all of that, after all that prayer that went on, you asked me if I'd look at the wall again, that ancient wall where we started out. And so when I looked at the wall, originally it didn't have any cracks in it. All the cracks were closed and the boards were real close together. And now I could see cracks in these boards, between these boards. So you suggested that I might want to look through there and see what I could see. And I thought we were finished. I was ready to sign off, goodbye, see you next week, blah, blah. And so when I looked through the cracks of these boards, I could see this beautiful valley. And it was just mountains and hills and grass and beautiful, beautiful landscape and castles.
Oh, man. Here we go.
So as soon as I said castles, you flew into prayer again. And I had parts from all these rituals that had been done in Tibet. And I think it wasn't just one trip. I think I was there many, many times. And so these castles were just full of my parts. And so Jesus just started emptying them out. And I could see from way off in a distance, I could just see all these kids. And coincidentally, they turned out to be about 14, which is the age I was when I went to on this original trip to Tibet. And so all these kids were coming out of the castles, and they were all in what I call Templar outfits, because I had a lot of Templar connections in my history. And they were all carrying standard flags and waving them. And so they're filing all down through the valleys on this little pathway, coming forward from all these castles. And I look down, and here's Jesus, and he's at the edge of a river, and all these kids are coming down this lane, and as they pass by him, he just blesses them, and they have to go through the river to get to the other side. So he was baptizing all these parts as they were coming out of castles of bondage. And the last one in the row of all these children was me on the lamb with wheels. So kind of wrapped up the whole day right there.
Okay. So obviously, folks, what's happening, maybe this isn't so obvious, is that we're running into items, elements of Jan's memory, knowledge that certain things took place. I'm not necessarily, when I'm working with her, interested in every little detail about, okay, well, what were all 7 steps of the ritual involving these Tibetan children? I'm very interested in, okay, well, we have enough to know how to apply a prayer resource in order to get her free. And we begin to use prayer resources to untether her from that temple and to untether her from, Rothschild's Israel. And why would I use that term, Rothschild's Israel? Well, if you look at the history of the Balfour Declaration and how the Rothschilds even had gone in and manipulated things in the government leading up to World War II in order to ultimately lay hold of that land post-World War II. It's just a massive, massive conspiratorial effort. And you begin to realize the amount of witchcraft involved in the establishment of that land, such as the strategic, rituals and children being either, Jan being inseminated or whatever, there's a lot of darkness that goes into that foundation. And what I'm doing is I'm saying we're going to untether Jan from that foundation. Whatever power they, as in the powers of darkness, drew from Jan's life, being literally chosen to be part of that foundation of iniquity in that agenda, they now lose. Why? Because Jan chooses Jesus. And so there's a lot of deep stuff that goes into why we do what we do, but we're pulling her out so she can enjoy the freedom and liberty that Jesus died to give her. And that's what she is explaining that we're praying into. We're also liberating hearts that are in regions of captivity. And those regions of captivity look like castles in this case. And so God gets all the glory. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, except that one of the things that I've been asking Jesus for at the end of my sessions is confirmation sometimes, because we keep stretching me, and it gets harder, and every time it just keeps getting harder and harder to believe some of the information that's coming forth. So I've asked Jesus for confirmation